welcome to Emerald Cities and the first of several virtual training programs. We will bring to you over the next several months subject matter experts on areas of workforce, policy, project development, and financing. We're very pleased to have with us today Ann Randazzo. Ann is the Executive Director of the Center for Energy Workforce Development, which she helped found and formed 6 years ago. She has spent her entire career in the energy industry, and for those of you dialing in from Georgia, you'll be glad to know that a lot of that time was spent at Georgia Power. And she has worked as an employee and as a consultant in the area of strategic planning and organizational design. Her presentation today is really about jobs in the energy utility industry. We wanted to have an opportunity for you to begin to understand the full range of careers that can be built in your communities, some of them that are non-construction related, but then begin to still support our work in the energy sector and particularly helping to build out a sustainability sector in our community. Ann Randazzo.
Thank you, Janine. So this afternoon I want to talk a little bit about CEWD and how we were formed and what we do, but I also want to spend some time talking to you about energy workforce development. And I think that there are many different things that we do for CEWD that can be applied in different areas, whether or not you're focusing on these specific jobs or others. It's the general pathways that we're working on that will make a difference in the long run. For CEWD, we were formed in March of 2006, and we came together as the energy industry because at that point in time, we were facing massive construction, we had an aging infrastructure, we had an aging workforce, and so we felt like there were things that we could do better together than we can do separately. Everybody's facing the same kind of issues. So what can we do as an industry to help build a new pipeline of workers for the energy industry? Since that time, no surprise, things have changed, they're different, but many of the things are the same. And so from CEWD's standpoint, we focus in 4 different areas: career awareness, education, workforce planning and metrics, and structure and support. And the idea behind all of this is that CEWD will build alliances, processes, and tools that our members can take and use to build the workforce for their state, for their region, or for their company. So when we look at workforce development in the electric and natural gas utility industry, we focus on 3 different stakeholders. The industry is one, they bring the demand for the jobs. Education, another, they bring the supply. And then the third is the potential applicants, and they actually bring the skills in. And all of those things have to be balanced together. It doesn't do any good to have a workforce demand if you don't have a supply for providing that. And if the applicants come out without the right skills, then they certainly will not get the jobs or won't be able to be successful in those jobs. So there's 3 different things that really drive workforce development in the utility industry. The first is this need to balance supply and demand for key job categories. And we focus primarily on the state level, but we also work regionally and nationally. And being able to balance how many jobs you have, for example, as line workers, to how many jobs you have in other areas is critical. So I'll talk a little bit later on about what those numbers look like and what some of the things are that we're doing to balance. The second is skill gaps in potential applicants. We have thousands of people who apply for our jobs, and a few who can actually pass the pre-employment test, who have the background, to have a clean background check, who can pass the drug test, all of those hurdles that you have to pass in order to get a job in the energy industry. So what we want to be able to do is close up some of those gaps, to be able to figure out what is it that's stopping potential applicants for getting the jobs, and what can we create as an industry to make sure that those gaps are filled. And then the last is new and emerging technologies. And some of these technologies require additional skills. Some of them require the same skills and a little bit different knowledge. So to be able to look as we focus on the future where we know technology is going to have a huge impact on the business, and really be able to identify which of these technologies is going to change what we do and which of these will actually just evolve with our current jobs. We look at 4 different types of jobs: line worker, technicians, plant and field operators, and engineers. We came to this by starting with the industry and asking what are the jobs that are the most critical and that are hardest to fill. And I think certainly with any workforce development effort, it starts with the jobs. What are the jobs that you're trying to fill? So from there, we are focusing on demand, how many are going to be needed, when are they going to be needed, where are they going to be needed. We forecast out 10 years into the future, but knowing exactly where they're going to be needed and what type really depends on the state, on the individual utilities, on the fuel types and the fuel mix in a particular state. And then the supply. How many are currently enrolled in programs? How many are expected to complete? And that's a huge issue, as you know, in the education system, where we have many students enrolling but not so many completing. And when and where will they be graduating? That way we can balance by key jobs and by state. And I think this is certainly true regardless of the type of job that you're focusing on, being able to match up the education supply with the demand from industry. So let's talk a little bit about how you balance supply and demand. It's tough. It's constantly changing. We have run surveys every year since we started CEWD back in March of 2006. And overall, the numbers look a little bit different, but they change in terms of who's hiring, when are they hiring, and where are they hiring. The 2 biggest impacts for our industry are probably the economy. Our utilities have gotten hit just like every other industry when the buildings have been built but the meters aren't turned on. Then of course that has a huge impact on utilities. And then technology, as I mentioned, is another one. Certainly the smart grid is part of that, but we also have technology that really has become part of every job that we have, whether they're technicians or line workers or others. So those 2 things, economy and technology, certainly impact demand. On the supply side, some of the key factors are interest. Who knows what a line worker is? When you're coming out of high school, do you understand what it takes to become a technician in this industry? What are the common programs? The more we can create programs that focus on foundational skills and build from there, then the bigger supply we have for actually moving into these jobs. And then the last is sustainability. We've all seen programs that have been funded either through grants or by a particular organization only to stop once the grant has come out. So the programs have to be sustained over the long term. And we have some strategies that we've put in place in order to make that happen. But how do you balance it? It still looks a little off, doesn't it? We think you balance it by partnerships, by including people with similar needs into the mix. So we work with utilities. They're our members. And certainly not every utility has exactly the same needs, but they have similar needs. By bringing in those in construction or contractors in a particular area who have the same need for technicians, then you can begin to balance supply and demand at the state level and at the regional level where it's so critical. So when we talk about balancing supply and demand, we really look at it not only in terms of the job, but over a period of time. And let me give you an example of why we do that and how it affects workforce development strategies. There are a certain number of positions that are open right now. We call them ready now. So if you look on the internet and you go to Monster or Career Builder or whatever, you go to one of these companies, you'll see jobs posted right now. That is too late to start a community college program to fill those jobs. So where do you go? Where's the supply? For us, it's the military. We have a terrific program called Troops to Energy Jobs for the military. It might be transitioning adults, people who already have the skills. It might be community college graduates or those who have recently graduated from an energy career academy. So that's the workforce development strategy on the supply side for those that are jobs that are currently open. But we also forecast out in the next 1 to 2 years for those jobs. The strategies involve working with community colleges because these are people who are already enrolled. You know the statistics as well as I do. There's no such thing as a 2-year degree, but we do have programs where people will be in their last 2 years of an associate degree program. those are the ones to target for the jobs that are coming open in a year or two, are high school seniors or juniors, particularly the ones that are enrolled in a very specific program like an Energy Career Academy. For those that are going to be open in 3 to 5 years, the workforce development really has to happen in high school. That's in grades 9 through 11. They will be ready to enter programs and enter those jobs in the next 3 to 5 years. And in 6 to 10 years, those are students who are in elementary or middle school, which really pushes you back down the educational chain. So you see why we work all the way across the education continuum in CEWD. You might think grade 4 is a little far back for us to be working, but grade 4 is when most girls decide whether or not they like math, and if they don't like math and decide they're not good at it and they don't want to take it, then they will not be ready for these jobs. Our jobs are STEM jobs, so they require science, technology, engineering, and math, and it means you have to start making those decisions as early as elementary school in order to enter the right level of math to get these jobs. So the programs that we work on for the jobs that are ready in 1 to 2 years are existing. They're already on the books. They are already being taught. The ones that we're focusing on in 3 and 5 years might be some new programs. But you know how long it takes to get a program created at a community college or a technical school. So that's forecasting out with that demand for 3 to 5 years. It's tough to get the numbers on the demand side because it means everybody has to really be pretty accurate on their forecast for the next 3 to 5 and 10 years. But finding numbers on the supply side are even harder. We have to be able to identify who are the current programs state by state where we are partnering, and then track all the students. Much of the federal data for education tracks only only full-time students, or if you leave and go someplace else, then you're dropped. But we need to be able to track students all the way from high school through employment so that we know where they are and when they are expected to enter the job market. And then we have to be able to forecast a lot more accurately for completion. I already mentioned a 2-year degree takes more than 2 years. Some of the statistics that have come out from Complete College America, they have a great report called Time is the Enemy, shows that the amount of time that it takes can be 3 or 5 years or longer for an associate degree. If we can do these things, be able to track all of this and define it, then we can define how many additional programs we might need to implement. So let's talk a little bit about the number of jobs that we're focusing on. In the industry, we have, as you can see, for 2011, 525,000 jobs. That's down from 2009, which was the last time we actually did a survey. We use national data from the census and BLS and also some state data, and cut it by NAICS codes for electric and natural gas utilities. That's where this comes from. You can see that we were building by 2009, and now we've dropped that down again. Some of this because of the hiring and the economy, others because of that reason I mentioned earlier, technology is changing what's going on in the jobs. Well, when we factor all this in and look at our key jobs, the ones that are line workers, plant field operators, technicians, and engineers, this is the way that they map out. I'm not sure what happened to the labels there, but the highest demand that we have by 2015 is in the nuclear area, 30,000 in technicians and plant operator positions. For technicians in other types of fuel, we need about 28,500. Line workers is 22,000. Plant operators a little over 12,000, and engineers 10,000. You might look at these and say, well, it's not that many jobs. So, but what's important to understand is that for those 22,000 line workers, it's a 5-year apprenticeship in order to become journey level. And the jobs require you to be able to operate independently and at a journey level. So those 22,000 jobs will take a long time to come to proficiency. And it's also a very expensive apprenticeship. It costs the companies about $200,000, not including labor, to train one line worker. So it's a Harvard education, basically, for these. But for all of these jobs, these are absolutely careers. They pay well. They are very, very highly skilled, and there's lots of advancement once you enter the companies. The big question is, for line workers, for example, 22,000, where and when? Because those of you who are involved in workforce development know that it's very difficult to get people to move from one area to another. Certainly moving from state to state is difficult, sometimes even moving within the state is difficult. So we have to be able to pinpoint exactly where we need them and when. This is the way the numbers track out over time. By 2020, we will need the numbers you can see across the bottom. It's interesting to look at the potential attrition and retirement, and I'll give you a little bit more detail about how that breaks out. But we actually look at not only the number of people that are leaving because of retirement, but the number that are going to leave for many other reasons. But, you know, we all make decisions about moving from one job to another. That those who leave these jobs and move on also have to be replaced over the same period of time. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about one of our key strategies, and that's what we call State Energy Workforce Consortia. We have 35 states now, I think if we can copy it, count them up, that will that have state energy consortia in their states. We have those consortia are groups of utilities, and they partner with their education partners, depending on what the strategy is, whether they're working at the secondary, post-secondary, or university level. And then they also bring in workforce or other groups that can help support their strategy. So the ones that are in blue are existing consortia. The ones that are in green are part of our work on the Get Into Energy Career Pathways model that's partially funded by the Gates Foundation, and that's where we are focusing on low-income young adults, and the consortia are helping us to figure out how we can bring low-income young adults into these high-skilled, high-pay jobs that we have. So with that, I'm going to take just a moment and stop and see if there are any questions to this point, see if there's anything that in particular pertains to what we have talked about so far. So Taylor?
Sure. Looks like we have a question from Jack. One second. I'm going to unmute the line. If anybody has any questions, feel free to, one second, feel free to speak up.
Maybe not.
Bad idea. If you're on a computer, you can use the chat feature. Oh, Tara has a question. Tara Marchant from Oakland. Her question is, how long have the new pilot programs been around, and what is their success rate?
I'm not quite sure what you mean by new pilot programs. We have been
the Gates Initiative.
The Gates Initiative started in 2009, and we have been working in those 9 states since then. We have we had a planning grant, and then we have a 3-year project. So we are almost 2 years into that initiative. But they are our focus here is to be able to create programs if they need to be, but more importantly, to be able to move students into existing programs so they can be sustained in the long term. So depending on where you are, the programs may not be new, they may not be pilots at all. They may just be working to bring young adults, low-income young adults into those programs.
We have another question from Steve Gelb in Seattle. This question is, the pathway seems focused on young people. What about retraining older workers from other industries?
Great. You have led us right into our next point. So, Taylor, if you want to take us back to the PowerPoint, then I can talk about all the different demographics that we work on. The Gates Initiative does focus on low-income young adults because that's their focus. But we also work with youth in high school. We work with the military. We work with women in non-traditional areas and with transitioning adults.
So we're going to continue here. If you have any additional questions, feel free to submit them using the chat feature or the Q&A feature on the WebEx application.
So we talked about the what we're facing in terms of an aging workforce. Over the next 10 years, about 52% of our skilled technicians and engineers may need to be replaced. And this is the way that breaks down over time. We have an attrition rate, just the normal attrition, of about 12% over that time, which is extremely low for any company. That's about 2.2% per year. We have a little under 10% that are ready to walk out the door at any time because they are over the retirement age or right now. And then we have about 15% ready in the next 1 to 5 years and 15 in the next 6 to 10. So let's talk a little bit about pathways, which is one of the strategies that we have put in place in order to mitigate this aging workforce. We are looking at I said, the three different groups of stakeholders. And what we've done is defined what we mean by value in each one of those areas. So what is the industry looking for, what is education need, and then what do the applicants need. And our pathways are defined so that everybody gains in each of the areas that we're talking about. We started with the jobs, and then from there we looked at competencies. And this is our competency model that's out on the DOL website. We worked back in 2006 with the Department of Labor to create this. And one of the things that's interesting about it is that if you look at those first 3 tiers, and you go out on the website and look at the competency models that have been developed for all the different industries, what you'll see is that the skills are very similar. So we work very closely with manufacturing, construction, and other areas to make sure that the skills that we're looking for foundationally can also move into different careers in case there aren't these jobs available in a particular area. Tiers 4 and 5 focus specifically on our industry, and I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing there. And then Tier 6 through 8 focuses primarily on the job-specific skills for the jobs that you're seeing. And all of these jobs are in utilities, electric and natural gas utilities, because that's our focus, but they're also applicable to other areas in the energy industry. Again, as I said, you can go out and look at the ones for construction and manufacturing, but they all kind of fit together. So as we began working on these competencies, we started looking at what kind of assessments are available in order to make sure that students have the right skills. So tiers 1 through 3, those foundational skills, we call basic training, and we focus on the National Career Readiness Certificate to measure in Tier 2 math, reading, finding, and locating information. Manufacturing, construction also have that same credential. And then for the workplace skills and the personal effectiveness skills, we use either an energy industry employability skills assessment that we developed with Skills USA, that's for the younger students, or the talent or additional assessments from ACT and WorkKeys. And then tiers 4 and 5, we have an energy industry fundamental certificate. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And past that, for the job-specific skills, we use bootcamps and apprenticeship for college credit or an associate degree, whether it's an accelerated degree or an associate degree at a community college. So let's talk a little bit about pathways. And this gets to your point about, are we focusing just on youth? The answer is no, because in the energy industry, and particularly with utilities, we're looking for a diverse workforce. So we are looking all across the board, and we've identified 5 key demographics that will create this next generation of workers. So youth, certainly, because of what we talked about, the need out into the 6 to 10 year horizon. We need to focus on middle school and high school. The military, we've got a Truth to Energy Jobs initiative that I'll share a little bit about with you. But we have military coming back that have exactly the skills that we're looking for, and so we're working to make it easier for them to move into these jobs. We need women, and we need women in non-traditional roles. So we have focused on how to bring young women into some of these technicians and other positions, as well as engineering, working with low-income young adults, and then finally with transitioning adults, because we do have workers who either have lost their jobs in other areas or are interested in moving into and making a mid-career change. So this lays out what we consider our career pathways. We call it the big picture. All of these demographics move into work-ready boot camps, and they look differently depending on what the demographic is, but you'll see math is right at the top. Math is the #1 reason why students fail our pre-employment test, and so we have created a math boot camp that really focuses on the kinds of skills that you need in order to be successful in the industry and in particular to pass that test. We also focus on employability, which looks very different for the military than it might for youth, but it's how to transition into the civilian workforce for the military. For women, it's more about how to work in a non-traditional job. Then we move into the tiers 1 through 5 credentials, and then into the job-specific training, either a boot camp, ones for line workers, are about 6 or 7 weeks long. We have them all over the country where they get a climbing certificate, a commercial driver's license, OSHA 10, and really get the kind of training that they need to start an apprenticeship. We're also, through our Pathways model, assessing our apprenticeships for college credit, and we're looking at the line worker apprenticeship to do that because we think it's very important that you get credit, college credit, for everything that you're doing if you're going to be able to stack these credentials and move forward. The low-income young adults we've talked a little bit about. Let me spend some time talking about the military. We'll be moving along there. There we go, Truth Energy Jobs. So Truth Energy Jobs is an initiative that we started last summer. We have 5 pilot companies that have actually funded each of the Truth Energy Jobs, and those are Dominion Resources, the Southern Company, Arizona Public Service, American Electric Power, and Pacific Gas and Electric. And you'll recognize those as some of the largest utilities in the country. They have actually provided the resources and the funding so that we can create at a national level a template on the best way to bring the military into these jobs. So we focus on not only recruiting them, but making internal changes so that our policies and procedures are lined up and go beyond what's legally required. Our communication is set up, and we actually work with the offices in the military and in the workforce system in order to make this a smooth transition. One of the things that we're working on this year is to actually take the training for each of the key jobs I talked about, match it to what's required by the companies, and then to what you might get at a community college so that we can make sure that they get full credit, full academic credit for the training that they took in the military, and that our companies recognize that as well. So we talked a little bit about career awareness. We have targeted career awareness for each of the different areas that we talked about. And we also feel like coaching is critical. So depending on what the demographic is, again, it looks very different. For low-income young adults, it's much more high-touch than it might be for transitioning adults. For the military, it looks different, but we think that individual career coaching is pretty important. We have a website called Get Into Energy where we have profiled all of our jobs. We have videos and information not only for the students or for the military or women. We also focus on information for the educators and for parents as we do this. Lots of different material, print, and otherwise to help the companies be able to do this kind of outreach. And this is an example of the kind of things that CEWD has been able to do. We can create material at the national level. Our companies can then put their own name or brand on it, and so together we have created something that would take a lot more work if everybody had to do it individually. Talked a little bit about the Work Ready boot camps. These are short-term solutions, and they really focus on individual needs. I think everybody's familiar with the situation we have in this country with remedial education and adult basic ed. What we want to be able to do is to pinpoint where students might need help or adults might need help and prepare them to succeed, not fail or remediate. So for many of these, you can be assessed and then move on. We know in particular for our jobs, physical conditioning is an issue, so we're working on a boot camp there. These are all short-term. Some of the employability boot camps are as short as a weekend. For the tiers 1 through 5, the National Career Readiness and Energy Employability assess that ability to start training. We don't use them for screening for employment. We use them for development. So they test the levels for success all the way through. And in our pilots, we're actually compiling information to make sure that these are the right ones. We have energy industry fundamentals curriculum that we have created, and we actually received an ANSI accreditation on that, so that it really does, from the ANSI standpoint, attest to the quality of the curriculum, and also that the student has mastered the information. That energy industry fundamentals curriculum is available out on our website at no cost to secondary and post-secondary schools. So it's available and covers really the waterfront in terms of energy. We call it Energy 101. Why do we do this? Because there's no other credential that really makes sure that potential workers understand the industry as a whole. It also helps to understand the full picture before you start job-specific training and understand where you fit in. It also helps because in many cases the utilities have to provide this information after the employees are hired. So it's a way to get a credential, an industry-recognized credential that applies to many different jobs. In education, we focus on those short-term boot camps, and we're working on common curriculum for each of them, not standard curriculum, but where it makes sense to share, we certainly want to do that, and we want to focus on the curriculum that's available. We also look at promising practices where someone's doing something particularly well, and we make sure that our members know about that. And then this year, for the first time, we had our first National Energy Education Network meeting back in February, where we pulled together those schools that are partnering with utilities and state consortia, and everybody was able to share what they're doing and share some best practices there. We have created very specific pathways for each of our jobs. We call them putting STEM to work because these are STEM jobs, but sometimes they don't get recognized as such. And so for each of the key jobs that I talked to you about, we've created a common pathways framework. You can see you start here with a high school diploma or a GED, and then add competencies to that. And it really fits in with this kind of learn and earn model. We call it learn more, earn more, where you start, and then you can take more training and move back in and really move up the ranks. We've created it so that it can be customized for either a state or a company, so they can put their specific job titles in or the way that they their pathways work. So this is me, and you can certainly go out to our website to get more information. But Taylor, I'm going to turn it back to you so that we can look and see if there are any questions, anything that anybody wants more information on.
Okay, so I think we have a couple more questions. I'm just going to go through the list here. From Gary Harris in Atlanta, he says, in Georgia, GEICC focuses primarily on the Volgite nuclear power. How do we move it toward a broader set of pathways, like energy efficiency, which is the focus of Emerald City?
So, hi, Jerry. They are very focused at this point on Vogel because of the new build that's going on there, but they're focused a lot in the high school level too. And I think in particular for energy efficiency, where we have some ways that we can work together is focusing on that career awareness, being able to create those pathways for energy efficiency that dovetail into the other work, and then it becomes broader. I would start with the same kind of process that we started with. What are the jobs? What are the skills that are required? And how do those fit into the competency models that the Georgia Consortia is focusing on now, and those credentials, and then where are the programs now and what else needs to be developed, so that students can come in and out of these. It's not for energy efficiency, certainly many of the utilities focus on bachelor's degrees for that in engineering. For energy auditing, it looks a little bit different, and those jobs might fit someplace else. And for the most part, what I'm talking about does fit with utilities. That is our focus. But I think you can see that the process and the model could really be adapted to other kinds of jobs.
And it looks like he had a second part to his question. How do you account and prepare for fast-moving emergency sectors like natural gas production from shale fracturing, which is creating an entire new energy workforce sector demand, given low cost and increased generation demand, and domestic energy security and production issues? So,
certainly natural gas technician is one of our key in-demand jobs. And again, you start back from the beginning. What are the jobs? What are the skills? What do they have in common with the training programs that we have now? We want to, as much as possible, be able to educate for common skills and then branch out and major into these others. It's all based on job demand. So if you look at what the demand is for these new areas of technology, and certainly the shale fracking is one of them, how many jobs are we talking about? What are they, and what are the skills? It keeps coming back to that. And as much as possible, if we can tie those into the programs that already exist for natural gas technicians, then we create a workforce that can do more and that can be much more flexible. I think where we create training programs for specific jobs, sometimes for niche jobs, then if those jobs aren't available immediately when you graduate, then you have to move into other areas. So we have focused on more common skills and programs that give you those foundations so you can move in a number of different areas. And if the demand is there, then it simply means creating more programs at the community college level or in other areas to be able to produce those. Once you have the first one done, then you can replicate it. And that's exactly what Georgia's done with their line worker program. They were able to take one, they replicated it in 3 different areas of the state, and now they have a steady supply for not only the needs of the utilities, but for contractors and others. I think it's the same type of process.
If there are any other questions, please feel free to submit them at this time. While we're waiting to see if any other questions come in, I just wanted to remind everyone that this session will be provided to you all, a recording of the session, and so you'll be able to revisit it if you need to or forward it to your constituents. Also, I noticed that there was a mistake on the session title. This one is Jobs in the Utility Sector. Tomorrow's session will be working with ESCOs. We are pretty new to this system, so we've had a couple of problems trying to figure it out. That's just one of them, but please bear with us as we work through this. And, you know, if you guys have any feedback, definitely please send that to us once the session is ended. Looks like we have another question from Avni in San Francisco. Her question is, how can we look to sync up with CEWD and efforts in California?
So there is a consortia in California. It is made up of Pacific Gas and Electric, Southern Cal Edison, SMUD, and others. And I would suggest that if you go out to our website, look under About, drop down to the consortia, and it will give you the information for the lead for the California Consortia, as well as any other. And you could start a conversation there. We have many of the utilities in California are part of CEWD.
Are there any other questions? Also, we wanted to kind of frame these sessions similar to how our quarterly trainings were when we would meet up last year. And a part of that process was for us to make sure that on the local level you guys are actually engaging with the information that's being given to you, and that we here in the national office are able to check in with you via homework assignments or next steps. So along those terms, Ann, can you just talk a little bit about what, in general, everyone can do to follow up on the local level in terms of maybe using some of your models and applying them to their work locally?
Sure. I think you can, as I mentioned, it starts with the jobs. What are the jobs? And then what are the skills that are required for those? So I would suggest that you first identify what specific jobs there are, and then go out to the DOL website, to the Competency Clearinghouse, and you'll find a number of different competency models there. I think certainly for much of your work, the energy competency model fits. It may be that you need to define some job-specific skills at a higher level. Then do some asset mapping. Who's currently providing training in that area, and how can you partner with them? Building these partnerships is really the answer to I think everything that we're doing in workforce development. So start with the job, identify the skills, figure out who's doing what. And then the fourth area is really to focus on what demographic you're looking at. As I said, it's different depending on whether or not you're looking at the military or women or transitioning adults or youth, and be able to identify which demographic you want to focus on. What's the pipeline for those that particular demographic? Where do they currently come from? And then focus on there as you go forward.
Great. So if there aren't any other questions, we can wrap up here. Once again, apologies for the delay in the beginning, but we have ended a few minutes early, so we're still on track. If you would like to follow up with Ann directly, you have her contact information, which will also be sent out to everyone in addition to a copy of her PowerPoint presentation and a recording of today's session. And once again, thank you, Ann, for everything that you have done today. We really appreciate it, and everyone who called in, thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow's session will be at the same time, and the subject is working with ESCOs, and that's going to feature Don Gilligan, the president of NESCO. We look forward to speaking with everyone or chatting with everyone tomorrow, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Those clicks are everyone hanging up.